Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member Shabbat, for holding this hearing on the Farm Bill. We're moving from Brooklyn, Iowa to Brooklyn, New York. So I just want to put that in perspective for you. As you know, Madam Chair, New York City has made great strides in maximizing accessibility to federal food stamp programs for eligible New Yorkers. But many potentially eligible people have not yet enrolled. I believe that Congress must take the next logical step to maximize the participation of small farmers in the program by modifying some of the guidelines that will bridge the gap between family farmers and low-income families. We need policies that promote a food system that is more sympathetic to the health needs of underserved communities around America, including support for market incentives and institutional procurement policies that favor healthy food. A seamless flow, if you will, of produce from small farms to urban consumers with a real meaningful, sustainable expansion of the marketplace. The 2007 Farm Bill should support an increase in food stamp benefits to help more poor and low-income families to buy healthy foods, improve outreach and efficiency in the food stamp delivery, as well as nutritional education. We must expand the scope and size of the USDA Community Food Projects Competitive Grants Program to about $60.5 million annually, mandatory spending, and add specific uses of fund in the flowing new program area into funding new program areas to meet the urgent need to supply healthy local foods to underserved markets. We must also expand farmers market nutrition programs to the 2002 authorized funding level of $25 million and authorize these farmers markets to be certified for WIC fruit and vegetable vendor status to give greater opportunities for seniors, nutritionally at-risk women, and children to buy fresh, locally healthy produced foods. Having said all of that, I'd like to raise a question with you, gentlemen. Over the past 15 years, most states have switched from paper coupons for food stamps to debit cards, thereby removing the stigma of redemption at the checkout counter. As of last year, there were 9 farmers markets in New York City that used EBT. The WIC program, which still uses paper, will mostly do the same. Most small farmers, of course, don't take plastic and have seen their sales plummet with the switch from paper. Without the expansion of the EBT card readers in rural and urban areas, small farmers fear they will lose the bulk of the farm bill they get now and be shut out of those hundreds of millions of dollars. How can Congress help both small farmers and people struggling to feed themselves and their families?
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but of course a lot of those folks that you're talking about through the food stamp program that we've had in the past, WIC programs and others, live in rural America. And the point that I was making earlier, an awful lot of folks living below the poverty line are living in rural America and have those kind of challenges and difficulties, no question about it. And as far as making those improvements, I know the Agriculture Committee historically has been very mindful of that. And in fact, believe it or not, we've had members of Congress from Brooklyn on the Agriculture Committee. I was thinking of Fred Richmond back years ago, who was very active about that. Shirley Chisholm as well. And they were very active, very vocal about that. And I think certainly it helped keep that as a major part of the Farm Bill and did a great job. I can't help but, given a little bit of an opportunity here, go back to this point. There were some real problems out there, and that's the reason I keep harping on this rate thing. It's going to be so important for so many of those folks that are certainly living in our areas, but you're going to have the same thing in New York City, is this rate issue, and if it gets out of hand, it's going to do great damage. I had one of the directors who's a manager of a local electric cooperative in Arkansas last month who was telling me about the fact he had this lady that called him up, an elderly lady, and she was talking about the fact that she thought she'd finally figured out how she was going to be able to pay her electric bill. She was having real difficulty in paying her electric bill. And as I mentioned, a lot of electric co-ops, their rates are higher just because we don't have many people living out there to bear that burden on that infrastructure. And it came down to the way she'd finally figured out how to do this was she was only going to take her medication every other day. Now, that's with today's rates. And that's what scares the daylights out of me, quite frankly, is if we don't get a plan together to figure out how we're going to deal with energy independence, climate change, and recognizing the fact that we've got to use all the tools. And if these folks that are, and we've got them in this town who see this as just simply, well, we'll just jack it up, it's a supply and demand thing, that could do great damage. So I'm hopeful we can help you on that.
Time is expired.